Hey class, in today's video we are going to take a look at knowing your audience and knowing your purpose when giving a presentation. Now I'm going to split this into two videos. This first part is going to be knowing your audience and what that means for any time you create a presentation, and in the next video we're going to look at knowing your purpose and how understanding that is going to make your presentation better. So without further ado, let's get into part one. When creating a presentation or even writing a paper, knowing your audience is one of the most important things you need to be aware of. Without knowing your audience, you're not going to know what types of words to use, how to present the information, and how much background information to provide. So to take a quick look at some of the things to be aware of to help you determine that and why that's important, we have a few options to look at here. When creating a presentation, knowing your audience means knowing things like their age, their education level, how mixed or similar they are, the number of people you're going to be sharing with, and the familiarity with the topic. So for example, if you were creating a presentation on, say, diabetes, or writing an essay on diabetes, if your audience is a group of board members at a hospital, the way that you approach that is going to be vastly different than if you were trying to present that at an elementary school to 4th or 5th graders. The words that you use, the way you structure your information, and even how long your presentation might be, all depend on who exactly you are speaking to. So some of the questions you want to ask yourself anytime you're presenting is, how old is my audience? Because the older they are, they might have more understanding on the topic. And keep in mind, this doesn't just apply to medical information, this applies to anything. So in this case, older might mean that they have more information and background understanding of medical concepts, but likewise, if you're presenting on something technology related, that might actually go backwards, meaning you would have to provide some more fundamental information about technology because, in general, the older generations seem to have a harder time understanding some of the newer technological concepts. So be aware of the age of the people that you're sharing with. And if you don't know the age, one of the best things to do is to be generalized in how you share information, meaning not being too specific so that it's going to go over people's heads, but at the same time also providing background information on any specific names, places, dates, terms, acronyms, things like that. So if you're not sure of the age or general education level of the group you're presenting to, be sure to assume they don't know what acronyms or definitions or diseases or terms mean. Always assume that you should explain that, not in excruciating detail, but at least give a passing explanation. So if you were talking about diabetes, you could say something like, diabetes is when your blood sugar is yada, yada, yada. That's important so that you can establish a baseline that everyone in the audience, whether it's physical or a digital audience, can understand what you're talking about. Because if you don't give those key pieces of information, nobody is going to know the foundation of what you're talking about. So everything else you continue on with in your presentation, they're going to be confused, get lost, and probably either walk away, leave, or just be bored and roll their eyes and maybe take a little nap. The homogeny or heterogeny, yes, say it however you want, of the group basically means how similar or dissimilar they are. When you're presenting online, chances are you're going to be speaking to or presenting to a very mixed bag of people. And when you have a very, very mixed bag of people coming from different ethnic, racial, age, gender, educational levels, basically any type of demographic or group that you can come up with, if you're speaking to a very generalized audience, the same rules apply where you should really focus on keeping things simple and explaining terms and concepts as you go along so that everyone can understand. But on the other hand, if you're speaking to a very focused group that know your topic well, you don't need to waste time preparing that information. You can jump right into the deep topics without having to lay that foundation because you can assume and understand that those people are going to know that. Likewise, you also want to know how many people you are going to be speaking to or with. Is it just one person, or is this going to be going to a group? The way you address people in the audience changes whether it's a one-on-one or a group of theoretically limitless people, like if you're posting something online versus if you're giving a presentation or even a job interview. And one of the other things to understand with their demographics is how familiar might they be with your topic? So let's say you want to present something about a disease, a treatment, or a condition that a patient is dealing with, and you want to present this to their family. You could ask them beforehand or try and understand how much do they know about a treatment option that you are explaining to them. If it's very unfamiliar, you're going to want to go back and start at the beginning and explain things step by step. But if for some reason they know a lot about it already, maybe it's a condition that they've been dealing with for many years, you can jump in with language and terms that are a little bit more complex because you know that they will already be aware of that. Now, when you're paying attention to your audience, you also want to be aware of how you're presenting that information. Are you going to be providing written information, meaning is the presentation just going to show words? Is it going to be audio and visual? Is it just going to be audio? Is it just going to be visual? When you're creating a presentation, you don't want to spend the time setting up a fancy background and dressing nice if you're only doing an audio presentation. I know that sounds obvious, but if you keep extending that and looking at that in all situations, you don't want to spend a lot of time writing something really elaborate and eloquent if nobody's actually going to read it and you're just going to be summarizing it. Are you going to be providing infographics and presentations? Well, make sure the images you use apply to and work with your audience. So you don't want to use maybe very, let's say, American specific imagery or things that culturally people in America might understand if it's going to be sort of a global or wider internet discussion. So be aware of sort of potential cultural needs or understandings when you're using graphics and in the way that you're presenting. And if you're going to be speaking in public, you need to be aware, again, of the demographics so you know how to address the people. And are you going to be presenting online? Or is it strictly public? Or is it going to be something you're presenting in public and is recorded for later? In that case, how are you going to dress? What is the dress code for the situation you are going to be presenting? Is this going to be a formal occasion where you're speaking to a live audience that are well dressed in suits, ties, dresses, etc.? Or is this going to be something super casual, maybe in front of your class just before summer break? And another thing to be aware of when you're creating a presentation for your audience is knowing their technological needs and proficiency. If you're speaking in public, obviously this is a little bit less important, but if you're doing a digital presentation, you don't want to provide a presentation that is incredibly complex and requires clicking links and using 3 different apps to follow along live. You might want to just present a video, maybe upload it to YouTube, something like that basically anyone can access on any form of technology. But on the other hand, if you're speaking to a well-educated demographic that understands technology and your concepts well, then you can get really creative by using things like a Canva presentation with live chat or using Twitch and things like that that will enable you to take full advantage of both your skills and their understanding. So depending on what your audience is aware of and what they can do, use the technological tools that will fit their needs, not your needs. The presentation is all about presenting information to them. It's not for you. The preparation period is where you learn, but in the presentation, that's when they learn. So make sure you're picking tools that are going to work for them, not for you, because you want to present the information with their needs in mind, not yours. And if you find something difficult, it's time to either practice it or set it aside because they might find it difficult to understand as well. And the final thing that you want to be aware of with your audience is if it's going to be synchronous or asynchronous, meaning is it going to be live and everyone's going to be seeing you at once, or are you going to have the opportunity to record this and do multiple takes and recordings to try and get it right? Each one of those will require different preparation. If it's a live event, you're going to want to practice behind the scenes memorizing certain key topics. And if it's asynchronous, the idea will be to keep redoing your presentation until you get just the right take that's going to work for your audience. So basically, knowing your audience means knowing their needs, their understanding, their background information, and their demographics, and how you will be presenting this information. All of those things should be at the forefront of your mind when you're creating a presentation, because you don't want to provide information that the average person isn't going to be able to understand. Likewise, you don't need to spend half of your presentation introducing a complex topic if you're already speaking to experts in the field. So as you create any presentation, take a few minutes to really assess who your audience is and the way that you're going to be presenting to them, so that each decision you make about which tools, the length, the method of sharing it, all of those things are going to be conscious decisions that are specifically tailored to your audience's needs.